Hello there. How are you? Are you having a good weekend? I really hope you are. I need to absolutely confess here. I am so underprepared for today. I honestly thought I would be really like super prepared and all up and ready and all that jazz. But you know what? On Friday, when I was talking about the weekend energy and how we might be feeling, I do remember saying in the weekend forecast that Sunday you'll be so much better off if you could just get a few minutes to yourself, just so that you can get really feel really, really relaxed. And actually, the reality of my weekend is that it was taken over with all sorts of extra items in the bagging area, so to speak. And so I've been out for most of the day with the family, meeting up with people in the park in Portugal. The Easter celebrations are still going on. I got really sunburned. I thought I might get a time to just sort myself out, but no, mamahood and family life is, it is what it is. And I wouldn't be without them. I have a couple of confessions to make. In the week ahead forecast, I reference the eclipse gateway because we're going into eclipse season this week. The total solar eclipse is happening on Thursday the 20th, followed by the penumbral lunar eclipse on the 5th of May. I haven't actually recorded that yet, so that will be coming. I was a bit optimistic as to how much I might achieve today, but anyway. So what are we going to do? Well, actually, before we go any further, let's just send a bit of love to people. So we've got a few people watching already, which is great. And it's absolutely beautiful to have you here. If you're new to this show and you like it, then just, think about giving us a little like. It all helps. It's a new show that is starting out, and I'd absolutely love to continue with it for as long as it's useful for everybody. I'd love to hear where you're coming from as well. I always like to know how far we're reaching out. I can see we've got Richard Laws here, who has very kindly shared with me his time, place, and date of birth. Hi, Richard. Thank you so much for that. If I've actually already got 3 people lined up. If I get a chance to have a look at it, I'll look at it today. If not, I'll do it next week for you. We've got family Munson. That's my husband downstairs saying hola, boa tarde. Hello, good afternoon. We've got Deborah Co-op from I believe she's in Ireland. That's what being a mammy is all about. It sure is. I tell you what, we've had tantrums and all sorts going on this weekend. I feel like our 11-year-old is also heading into teen years, which seems a bit early, but hey, it is what it is. And I was certainly no angel growing up. We've got Sarah Taylor from the north of Portugal giving us a round of applause. Thank you so much for that. And a nice smiley face from Richard Laws. So if you are watching, let us know where you're watching from. And if you'd like to take part at some point in the future, drop me your time, place, and date of birth, and I can put you on the wait list. Deborah's actually in Yorkshire visiting my daughter. Very nice. Yorkshire's a lovely place. I've visited it a few times. I hope it's lovely there back in the UK. So today. So I'm going to have a look quickly at a couple of comments that have come in since the last show, because it's building an idea as to what might be useful. And then I'm going to play the forecast for the week ahead. It's about 7 or 8 minutes, but it should give you a bit of a heads up, and it will give me a chance to catch my breath. And I'm going to pull a couple of cards or two as well, just to add into that. And then I'm going to go live, have a live look at 3 charts, and sort of give you, I don't know, sort of like give people a sense of how I look at charts and how you might choose to look at a chart when you look at it for the first time. It's always interesting, isn't it? It's really hard looking at your own chart. I mean, most people, when they start learning astrology, they learn, they're learning about it for themselves to understand themselves better, or that's how it was for me. I was a little 11-year-old, just like my son is now, actually, and thinking, who am I? What am I doing here? What's my purpose? And so I got this big compendium about astrology, and just started reading it furiously. And back then, obviously, because I'm coming up to 50, Back then, we didn't have computer programs to be able to just generate our charts. So I was like, I bought myself a Raphael's Ephemeris for 1974 and had a look and started building my chart up. And it's a really sort of insular process. And I think one of the great things about the internet and the fact that we've got all these communities and these community spaces together is that we can share the process and we can look for each other. And so hopefully, you might choose to look at your birth chart slightly differently. You might give yourself a bit more compassion. When I first started looking, I remember a lot of these astrology books can be quite fatalistic, especially some of the old ones from, the 1980s, 1990s and stuff. And I remember reading this book about, the moon position, and I've got my moon in Pisces, and it was really scathing about people with the moon in Pisces. It said it was like one of the worst places to have the moon, that you'd never amount to much. It was awful. So yeah, I think it's time for us to all kind of join hands a little bit and boost each other up. So let's have a look at what we've got in the mailbag. And keep your comments coming as well. If there's something you want to ask, then I'll get back to you just as soon as we can. I don't know how long this is going to last, probably just until I run out of steam and you guys do too. I'm thinking maybe about an hour tops, because then I want to just go and enjoy the rest of the day. I'm going to walk the dogs and see sunset. So this is just, I don't know, something my husband's made. It's got no alcohol in. What a shame. Okay, so in the mailbag then, I had a couple of comments, but I put a little note out in the community to say, yeah, I'm going to be talking about birth charts. Let me know your details and stuff. And Penny Albertella, that watches quite a few of the shows, she wants to talk about Chiron and Pluto. And she's also saying, I hope you start a horoscope course soon. You've so much knowledge. That's really kind. I know what I know. And of course, the more you know, the more you realize you want to know. And I'm always trying to learn from other astrologers. In fact, I've got a couple of other astrologers, one from Texas, one from the UK, not Texas, Tennessee. We're going to start doing some shows together as well and start, collaborating, I guess. I think it's really helpful that you get views from many different people. So, watch this space, Penny. I'm thinking of launching a private group on a platform called School. My husband runs a community on School, and it's quite new. There's no advertising, so you don't get any fact checkers. And you don't get any advertising, and it's completely private, and it's actually really, really functional. We've been playing around with it for a few weeks, and I really, really like its style. So I'm planning on doing something there, and I'll let you know when I know more. And yeah, Deborah, who I'm going to be looking at her chart today, she's saying I've been walloped by these. So Chiron and Pluto, I think, is going to be a bit of a theme. And yeah, Deborah added, I can't remember which stream it was, but the separation of the divine feminine and masculine is done on an inner outer level. We all are both, I think. I would agree with that 100%. And I think I really feel like the narrative that we hear from the news, sort of saying what it is to be a woman or what it is to be a man, it's an interesting one because it's kind of polarizing people. We've got all the tendencies within us. I just think there's some interesting sort of developments going on about gender at the moment. Once the divine family unit is destroyed, what then? Now that I agree with all of this, but I do really feel like at the moment there appears to be, I think, a willful destruction of the family unit. There you go. I've said it. Did you watch the documentary, The Century of the Self? Explains a lot of the programming of the me. We're heading towards we, thank God. I would also agree with that. And again, that does come up with Pluto. P.S. Can't wait to start really learning astrology. Any top 5-10 books you can recommend would be great, only when you have time. I've written some down already. When I heard Julia Ballas speak to Pam Gregory last year, it ignited massively. You know what? Pam Gregory's got a really great following, hasn't she? I don't know who Julia Ballas is, but fair play to her, collaborating again. I think it's good to collaborate with people. I can think of some books, but you know, a lot of the books that I was learning on were from like 20, 30 years ago. And a lot of astrologers now, they tend to they tend to have like a specialty. So like there's people talking about evolutionary astrology, or you might have people talking about like psychological astrology or intuitive astrology. There's all these different kind of themes. And I guess it's like pick your flavor and then start learning about it. I think, you know, the way of teaching right now is so fluid that we can really, really we can really do with just having dynamic conversations and kind of picking up on the bits that you need and the bits you don't. I also think we learn about what we need to astrologically when we are being challenged by the particular planet or even asteroids. I've put in some asteroids tonight. So for instance, I'm looking at Nikki's chart, I'm looking at Deborah's chart, and I'm looking at Sarah's chart. And I've actually found asteroid Nikki, asteroid Sarah, and also asteroid Deborah. Now, it's a bit of fun. Not every astrologer uses named asteroids, but I like to because I think they're almost like picking out an extra tarot card to get a bit of extra definition. And it's always kind of interesting. I just think the more I play around with astrology and add in asteroids here and there, you notice that like when a particular situation is coming up, that asteroid is becoming relevant to you. So for instance, just as my husband and I started talking about moving to Portugal, asteroid Portugal was in like a really prominent part of my chart and his chart. It's like you start to learn about something as the planet is coming in, because I do think we're all so divinely connected. For instance, you know, as Pluto and Uranus were discovered, and they've got discovery charts, and in fact all asteroids you can find the discovery charts of if you want to go down that route. But it's like everything that is discovered is birthing a new consciousness or an expansion of consciousness. So I think we get this deeper meaning when we're ready for it. Anyway, I digress. There's a few more comments coming in. So Deborah saying your Chiron return is coming soon. Yes, it is. When you gave me your date of birth, Deborah, I thought, oh, poor love, she's going through a Chiron return or just been through it. So I'd love to know how that is. What a shame. My new nickname, Asteroid Sarah. Okay. Excellent. So that sounds interesting. So let's see what else there is to explore before I bring on the update. Is there anything else I wanted to say? Oh yeah. So yeah, got Nikki. So Nikki, she's responded and says, I want you to, you know, if you could look in my chart, I'm born on the 17th of December 1998. I couldn't find that place in Macedonia, but can you explain Chiron in Scorpio in the 10th house with a conjunction with Mercury in Sagittarius and an inconjunction, which is also known as a quincunx, and I'll talk about that a little bit, with Saturn in Aries in the 3rd house. So I'm going to be looking at her chart in a very, very specific way. Then Sarah is, you know, looking forward to her quickie reading. You'll see I've blocked out her date and time, place, and date of birth. And then I love this from Deborah, born 3rd January 73. Oh, you're so good. I hope you fly. I wish I could do an Irish accent, by the way. I like you see through the lies. I'm sure there are a few people that do that are watching. Very grateful people like you exist. Thanks, Emil. You know what? You have no idea how much of a smile that put on my face yesterday when I got that message. That was perfect. So thank you very much. Right. Should we have a look at the forecast then? Are you ready for that? So let's, oh, and there's Nubionette, you're here. Thank goodness. I didn't get your time, place, and date of birth, but if you send it to, if you're happy to put it in the chat, if we get time today, I've got Richard's chart to look at, if we get time. But if I get time to have a look today, I'll have a look. But if not, I'll put you into the next show. I wasn't sure if you saw my message from before. I've already got people lined up, but I would absolutely love to look at your chart for you as well. Whew. Right, let's bring up the forecast then. Oh, and I should warn you that I've been out all day. I was at a big park in Caldas de Rainha in Portugal, and they had a flipping like festival on. It was so loud. So I was trying to find a quiet place. Here we go.
So this week ahead then, it's I think it's picking up on old themes from March. So if you remember in March, I was saying, you know, we've got the Jupiter Chiron conjunction, which is bringing up some of our most like core hurts, and also some of the most hurt people we know are coming into our lives or come knocking on our door, reminding us of where, you know, there's still work to be done, you know, where we're stopping and impeding our own progress. You know, we're reminded, you know, we may well have shown ourselves up, we may have felt exposed in some way. And this week ahead really picks up on those themes and it amplifies as the week goes on. So as we're starting this week from Monday, we've got an interesting conjunction between the moon and Neptune, which really highlights our sensitivity and everybody else's sensitivity. So if you think about it, everyone you come into connection with is likely to be super sensitive. So we've got that as a backdrop. We're starting this week with sensitivity. The moon is in the sign of Pisces as well. So we are all very kind of psychic spongy. For empaths, this is going to be quite painful probably because, you know, it's a bit too much of that energy that you're used to. But for people that are a lot more straightforward, it's actually quite beneficial to have a bit more intuition playing out. As we head into the 18th, which is Tuesday, we've got the moon going into Aries, which is getting us a little bit more dynamic. And the big news today is really that Venus Jupiter semi-square, which just isn't comfortable. You know, like any generosity and hope and optimism that you normally have, the usual flows where you know, when you see your pals and you just feel like I'm home, it's just not like that. It just feels like there's a little bit competition. And I think that's because, you know, we've been playing out these insecurities. They're coming up. We're being reminded of where we're not quite perfect, healed and whole. What you might find is that the people that are coming into your lives are showing you how you really are, in terms of what you find annoying about them or conflicted about them is probably what's actually going on for you. So watch out for that kind of selfish jealousy that comes up. It's a bit ugly. You know, it's not the nicest connection between Jupiter and Venus. As we're heading into the 19th, things are starting to get. I think the pressure is coming in, even though we're coming up to the time of the new moon, which is traditionally a release point and should feel, you know, make us feel so much better, because it's also a total solar eclipse. It just feels like something is imminent, something's about to change. And if you remember, and I've shared this in the big eclipse gateway video, but the new moon and the eclipse are starting in the sign of Aries and moving into the sign of Taurus. And so it really does feel like we're expected to do this very big scene change, and that everybody else is doing this big scene change. It feels like we're getting ready for the next act in our lives. So these are really big themes for this week. And so what you might want to think about, you know, as we're heading into Wednesday on the 19th, and the moon makes a conjunction with Chiron, and Saturn is in a really great position actually in a sextile to the North Node. What we're probably thinking about is, how can we raise our game? How can we raise our game from March? How can we raise our game from where we were, from the hurts that keep persisting and that we keep getting reminded of, not just irritations. I'm talking core stuff. Now, you know, if that doesn't really resonate with you, it might not be so much the emotional hurts, but it might be the physical hurts that are going on. You know, there are like patterns playing out right now, so intense. But like I said, if you can get this underway before Thursday, before the total solar eclipse, I get the feeling you're going to progress. You're going to have that feeling of a release, and also, more importantly, that feeling of a change. Oh, there's a blackbird just in front of me on the tree, just on a branch, just singing its heart out. It's so nice. I love this park. Anyway, on the 20th, listening to the eclipse video, but yes, it's a bit of a head turner. It's a bit of a kind of whiplash day. where we start really feeling quite independent, and the theme is about how we can I think release our identity and kind of relaunch ourselves, actually. And it quickly moves into, how can we get more security? How can we be more secure when we're releasing our thoughts about ourselves? So I would really factor on that. I think I'm sat on an ant's nest. Whoops. One thing that I think is important to recognize and to imagine that energy taking us up towards the weekend, and that is the square that the moon is making to Pluto, and also the sun is making to Pluto. Now the moon one will last no more than half a day, but the sun going into a square with Pluto, we feel it a good day and a bit before, and for a couple of days after. I really do feel that our emotional control and our physical control is I feel like we could do with working out where we're trying to control our life, and how actually our desire to control it is controlling us. Like, how are our pre-laid scripts for survival actually locking us up somehow? How are we limiting ourselves? So I think as this week progresses, we're going to get clear about it. And of course, as we go into Friday, we've got Mercury going to retrograde on a day when the moon makes a conjunction with Mercury and Uranus. And you'll see this in the daily one, in the daily updates. But to me, it feels like a really shocking and transforming week. If I was to put this week into a nutshell, I would say the skeletons are coming out the closet. We're starting to see ourselves as we really are. And we're starting to realise the true cost of what our wounds are bringing to our lives. So, yeah, the choice is yours. It's like, seek to understand and to release, or stay almost, not forever. I don't want to say forever because I don't like to be fatalistic, but this is our chance to, not this is our chance. This is a moment in time where it feels like everything is working towards transformation. So use it. If you could just push yourself just one step closer to that thing that feels a bit uncomfortable, I think you're going to unravel a whole load of old stories and be able to move beyond it. So anyway, enjoy your week ahead, and I'll catch up with you soon. Bye for now.
So there you go. That was me sat on an ant's nest. It's so funny because nature is very noisy, and I absolutely love that blackbird. And and I'm getting a, oh my, that must have been painful kind of emoji. I just thought while I was listening to that, I wonder what a blackbird animal symbolism is, and also the ant animal totem. And blackbird says, this is just, symbolizes instinct, intuition, bravery, and self-knowledge. They represent standing up for yourself, but also knowing that discretion is the better part of valor. So that's kind of interesting. And then the ant kind of spiritual meaning is, it points to the ability to cooperate with others and working for the betterment of society. This can represent a work-life balance, social interaction, or simply working well with others. So it's kind of interesting, isn't it, that as I was reading about the meaning of what's coming up in this week ahead, it's really sort of like pulling on, I think, the need for us to really tune in to ourselves and to really, really know what's going on. And to really think, what am I doing here? And to really kind of get to the core of it. It's something I've been working on so much myself, realizing where my limitations are and how I get quite easily discouraged. It's time for us to kind of like let go of those stories and really step up and step into ourselves. Oh, that's so sweet. Thanks, Deborah. You're so real. Yeah. I am kind of real. Yeah. Thank you for that. I picked a couple of cards during this. So Merlina, or this is from the Doreen Virtue set, which is kind of interesting because Doreen Virtue, I think in recent times has actually said, I don't believe in the angels and the messages anymore. I'm a follower of Christ now. So, she doesn't stand by her own cards, but it's saying you're confused and indecisive because you do not have enough information. Do research or seek expert advice before making a decision. So I think, like you don't have enough information at the moment. Do you know what I really think that's referring to is that it's like we're on a journey and there might be a corner or a turning and we just can't quite see what's ahead. And it's because we're not supposed to know just yet. It's like we have to take a couple of steps, see where we are, take a few more. I think, when we can see things so clearly that we lay out a plan, we stop working intuitively. And stop following our inner truth. So I really think, this minute in time is really about getting to the core of who we are. Absolutely. And Deborah's also saying, a blackbird came into the garden beside me yesterday and it didn't fly away. Had a great chat with him. That's so lovely. Thank you so much. You're my kind of person, Deborah. I really like that. Thank you. So let's get rid of that and bring up your charts. So I'm going to start with let's see where are these charts. I've got a little bit too much open on my computer. 1 second. I just need to kill a few things off without ruining this stream. And if you saw what happened on Friday, you might know why I'm saying that, because my son downstairs disconnected the internet all of a sudden while I was live streaming. I was really, really fed up. So, right, I'm going to start off with whoever's chart is on the screen first. Right, let's go there now. Oops. There we go. And I'll make that bigger. Let's see. And I haven't had a chance to look at these charts yet. So this is Deborah. This is Deborah's chart. And what I've done with each of these charts that I'm looking at is I've done them with just the usual planets of the solar system and Chiron. So this is Chiron here. I hope you can all see my mouse as it's moving around. If you could confirm that, that would be great, because otherwise it could be a little bit annoying for you if you're looking at, let me take a couple of bits off. Let me take that off. There we go. That's a bit better. Yes, we can see the mouse. That's great. Okay. So thank you, Sarah. Okay. So the first thing that I really like about Deborah's chart is actually, it really looks familiar to me. It's funny because I've also got Scorpio rising, and I'm born a year after Deborah, almost 2 years after Deborah, because I'm right at the end of the year. I'm a Sagittarius, but the shape of our chart is really, really similar. So, when you're born a year or two apart from people, you will have some similarities. So our Plutos are very, very similar. They're both in the sign of Libra. I also have my Mars and my Neptune in a conjunction in Sagittarius. Funnily enough, where Deborah's Moon and Mercury are, that's where I've got my Sun and Mercury. And then I've got Venus over my Sun. So that's kind of interesting. It's a very similar shape to mine. And I can see that Deborah's Chiron's here in the sign of Aries. And we've got Saturn here. So the first thing that really strikes me, apart from, comparing it to my own chart, forgive me, is that she's got a lot going on here in the second and third house. And the second house is, a lot of astrologers just say that it's about your resources and your earning potential. I think that's a little bit simplistic. And I've got most of my action in there as well. I think it brings up a lot about our values and what we can earn. But I really think valuing ourselves is also really key to this house. The other side of the coin in the 8th house is very much about other people's money. So you've got your money and then you've got other people's money over here. But the 8th house is also about secrets, and it's about blame, shame, guilt, and anger. and the whole life cycle from birth to death. And it's also about secrets. Traditionally, the ruler of this house is Scorpio, and Scorpio is very, very secretive. And so the 8th house represents a lot of the things that we feel a bit embarrassed about talking about. And I think they represent other people's values, because if you didn't feel embarrassed about anything in your life, like if you didn't have anyone in your life, you probably wouldn't ever feel embarrassment, blame, shame, guilt, or anger. Those emotions only exist because of other people's values that they put on you. So yes, I do think this is about what you earn, and this is about other people's money and how it comes into your life. But I also think this is about how you value yourself, and also how you value yourself in comparison to other people. So I think you can't really look at one house without looking at its opposite house, because when you've got, in fact, if I just show you the next chart and make it bigger, when you've got, like, you'll see these planets around the outside in green, that shows where the planets are as of today's date. And so anytime that planets go over this area, it's going to be activating all of these planets here in Deborah's chart. But similarly, when the planets come into this area, I mean, this is quite uncomfortable actually, where you've got, like, when the sun goes through here, or the moon goes through here once a month. It's going to be in opposition to Mars. This is Juno. I've got a few more characters in here. This is Juno that I use a lot. We've got Neptune, we've got Venus, we've got the moon and Mercury. So I would imagine that in Deborah's life, when the moon goes into the sign of Gemini, I would imagine that's probably one of the worst times of the year for her, or the worst times of the month. And in particular, that when the sun goes into this sign, I would imagine that brings up a lot of stuff for her. So I would, my first comment to you, Deborah, would be to watch that, really, really watch where the moon is at any time. And I would also say the same for this area here, where Pisces is, and also with Virgo is, because that also represents a square energy to this area. So these are very sort of like core areas of the chart. Now, in terms of what's going on in Deborah's chart, and because my angles are pretty much the same as Deborah's, I know some of what she's been going through recently, because she's, in recent years, in the last couple of years, she's had, and I say last couple of years, but really last year, Saturn was really dancing over her, this point here of the IC. It's the cusp of the 4th house. It's a really important part of the chart, and it really describes our childhood and our old family, and the beliefs about ourselves and the behaviors that have come from our upbringing. And so during this time, a lot of old stuff comes up, but that was also going on at the same time as Chiron was connecting with Deborah's Chiron. And if you think about it, very recently, just last month, we had Jupiter and Chiron in an exact conjunction, literally just less than a degree away from Deborah's Chiron. This is a very sort of, can be a really healing time, but like the lead up to it, I just think the lead up to your Chiron return, Deborah, probably felt very intense, because when Saturn goes over this point of the chart, we often get ill, or we get slightly depressed. Saturn, when it goes over any of these angles, often shows us a time when we feel quite depressed, quite lonely, and when we start to doubt ourselves. And so it usually shows a bit of a depressive state, or just not feeling the best, not feeling in great shape. And then she's getting a real wallop. She did say she got a real wallop from Chiron. Now, interestingly, my Chiron's also in the 6th house, in the sign of Aries, just like Deborah's. And my experience of Chiron in the 6th house is that it can bring up a lot of wounding to do with health. And a lot of wounding to do with how to live a functional life, because the 6th house is the place where we seek to live our life, and it's our day-to-day reality, which does include our health and healing and fitness and stuff. But it also includes, like, are you comfortable living the prescribed life? And so Chiron shows us where we've got a bit of wounding, but where we can also get some mastery. And so I would imagine that at some level, Deborah's had to learn to make sense of the daily grind, and also probably, needed some kind of health, maybe protocols to keep her going. Also, I also noticed that Mars and Neptune in a conjunction can bring up a lot of sensitivity to do with boundaries. Now, I can't see that anything is obviously, apart from Saturn here. Saturn is in opposition to both of those, or not the Mars, but is coming. Yeah, okay, Saturn's not quite in opposition to them, but it certainly feels like it. It's more the vertex there, but like Mars and Neptune in a conjunction together makes people's like sensitivity, like the intuition that people have, it needs to be actively used. You're dreamy, and you need to be actively doing something with that dreaminess and with that creativity. And if you're not, it can get really turned in on yourself. And similarly, with the moon in a conjunction with Mercury, you've got a real need to talk about things as well. And so I have no idea what you do, but I would imagine that like coaching and looking after people and somehow understanding people, understanding the human condition would be really, really important, because we often end up doing things that we need ourselves anyway, and that help us to understand things. I love the fact that your North Node is right in between this Sun conjunction Jupiter. And in this last week, we had Sun in a conjunction with Jupiter in a square, or almost in a square. It's in a like the sign of Aries is square to the sign of Capricorn. So you're kind of understanding that energy of optimism and wanting to start something. So I do think what's happened in this last week has probably really got you going again. And I think this new moon and total solar eclipse on Thursday is going to be really, really helpful to you. Pluto going into the sign of Aquarius is going to take such a long time to get to your angle here, so I'm not so worried about that at the moment. We all have these sort of Pluto angle moments at some point, and I think it's probably a real relief as well that Uranus is finally off your descendant and well into the seventh house, because I know that when it was going over my descendant and I had Saturn over the angle to do with my home, it's like, this is your home, and then this is your relationship. It's kind of difficult when you've got both of those being aspected by difficult planets. So I think you've been through it. I actually think you're the right side of it now, for what it's worth. So I really hope that's helpful. And I'd love to know how you found that. I'm going to have, actually, before I go, I just want to talk a little bit more about, look, isn't it interesting here that your named asteroid is in a conjunction with the midheaven at the top of the chart? Now, as I see it, like the midheaven, people say, oh, this is your career. Well, again, like the second house, I think the midheaven has a much bigger significance. I think it's like your ultimate destination. It's like it's where you feel your destiny is. And so to me, having your name there in the sign of Leo as well, I would say your life is coming in, like you're coming into your own. This is what your life is about, is coming into your own and really owning who Deborah is, but in a way that you can absolutely shine. Like the sign of Leo on the midheaven is a real need to let people see you. So I think your life and your experiences so far have been really polishing you up so that you can absolutely learn to shine, but feel really comfortable doing so. So I hope that's helpful, Deborah. Really do. And I'd love to know what you think. Got a comment here from Gary. Do signs of the zodiac have a permanent affinity to a particular planet? For instance, I'm a Taurus. That's a great question, Gary. Each sign of the zodiac has a planet that it's assigned. So, for instance, the sign of Taurus has an affinity with the energy of Venus, and so each of the stars. Hang on, each of the star signs. Like, I'm going to move my mouse around. So here's Taurus here. In traditional astrology, Taurus is ruled by Venus. So we've got Mars is the ruler of Aries, and we've got Venus, we've got Mercury, we've got the moon, we've got the sun, we've got Mercury again, we've got Venus, we've got Mars, and there's Pluto as a sort of secondary ruler for Scorpio. We've got Jupiter ruling Sagittarius, we've got Saturn ruling Capricorn. Then Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, but also has an affinity with Uranus. And then Pisces here is ruled by Jupiter, but has an affinity with Neptune. The reason some of these have got two is because those planets were discovered later and sort of added in and ascribed to particular signs. Now, I think it's quite useful, like, for instance, with Deborah's chart, her ascendant's in the sign of Scorpio. So we would say her chart ruler, you could consider that it's Mars, but you could also say it's Pluto. I would go with Pluto. Her Pluto in the 11th is quite interesting. The 11th is about friends and co-creations and things like that. And Pluto is a planet of transformation. So I would imagine that Deborah has a lot of friendships with people who are very transforming. Another reason why I would imagine that Deborah, if she's not doing something that's actually helping people as a career, I would imagine she's doing it, in her spare time. But I think she probably also has fatalistic friendships. She'll have a very sort of on-off quality. There'll be some people that she's had with her whole life. Pluto's a very sort of Marmite planet. You either like it or you don't. And it's a bit like having Scorpio ascendant. So if I was to look at your chart, Gary, I would see what your ruling planet is, and give it some attention. Anyway, I hope that kind of answered your question. It's probably worth actually doing an actual show about that. So, and you're saying Venus, I couldn't have hoped for better. You know what? Venus as a ruling planet is really sweet. It's really, really lovely. It's got a really lovely quality. So, yeah, I think it's great. And it's like the sign of Taurus, it's about sweetness. It's about stability as well. Taurus is a very stable sign, and Venus sort of gives it a kindness and a real love of simplicity, but also the luxury of simplicity. And I just think Taurus is great. It's a lovely sign. Anyway, I'm going to have a look now at the next chart that comes up. So the next one that comes up is Sarah's chart, and you'll see here we've got a really different. Oh, sorry, I said I wasn't going to put her date of birth on. I hope that was too quick for anyone to notice. So you see Sarah's got a very different shape to her chart. She's got this lovely, what's known as a mystic rectangle. Now, these blue lines represent where the planets are working harmoniously together, and these red ones show where things are a little bit difficult. Now, what's quite significant about Sarah's chart, in fact, I did a show a few days ago about the millennial astrology patterns. And in it, I also showed some related astrological patterns. And one of the patterns was for people born like 64 to 67. And they had Pluto and Uranus in a conjunction, quite a tight conjunction, in opposition to Saturn and Chiron. So Saturn and Chiron were together in the same place. Now, she's born a few years later. And so Pluto and Uranus have got a bit of space between them, and Saturn has moved quite a long way away from Chiron. So she's got sort of the essence of somebody born in the late 60s, but she's got like the spirit of it that I was talking about in the previous show. And one of those essences, I would say, because she's also got Jupiter in between these two planets. So Pluto's about transformation and control. And this area here is known as the 12th house. And this area is really, in old-fashioned astrology, it's nicknamed the place of your undoing. It's like the perpetual attic, or the thing that you, like, all the stuff that you sweep under the rug. You know, it's the place of our undoing. It's the place of all that's hidden. It's the place that we don't let other people see. You know, it's a really sort of personal and private place. And as such, it really represents the unconscious mind. It's very much about it's very much about how we work internally, our internal programming. So, for instance, for people who are really interested in psychology, they often have something in here. Funnily enough, the 12th house is also like the place of death as well. Sorry to go so morbid, but like this point here, the ascendant, and we read it anti-clockwise, or it goes anti-clockwise. The first house really represents our birth, and then we go through it in a sort of chronological order, and we end up dying. And so I think this area represents the final merge with all that is. It represents our souls leaving our body, if that's how you see it, or it results in nothing, if that's also how you see it. You know, I don't want to impose my sort of worldview on you necessarily. But one thing that I've noticed here, that this area is actually quite important in the lives of people who migrate to another country, because it's your final resting place. It's like where you might die. So it's not describing your death necessarily, but it's really showing a private part of you. And of course, if you move away from the life that you grew up in, and the context that you grew up in, you're going somewhere really quite private, where people don't know you, where you can really be yourself, where you can live your real, true inner nature. So it's interesting. You've got such, Pluto about control. It's like, how can I control the way I am? You know, maybe I need to be somewhere else where I can really reflect who I really am. And then with Jupiter here, that sort of enhances it, really, like it sort of makes it so much bigger. And then Uranus is making a break with whatever controls you. So I would say in Sarah's chart, I would imagine the teenage years were really quite important, and quite rebellious. I don't know if you were actively rebellious, but I suspect you'd have found ways to break the rules a little bit. I mean, you've got your ascendant in the sign of Libra, which is all about balance and keeping things very diplomatic. Your moon is in the sign of Aries, which does give you a really sort of independent nature, but it's in the 7th house, which is about other people. So you want to be independent, and yet you also want to be connected with people. So it's like, how can you really truly be yourself while also loving other people and being in communion with them? And I would say that that's one of the key challenges in your chart, Sarah, is how can you truly be yourself whilst being in close relationship to others? And then your sun in the 9th house. The 9th house is all about adventure, and also linked to emigration as well. And you've got your sun there in the sign of Gemini, which also shows that your the things you're interested in changes quite regularly, and it's hard to keep you pinned down. And that's actually kind of how you like it. You know, you are a free spirit, and you do want to live your life, and you do want to make your own decisions. So I love that. Now you've got Chiron right here on your descendant. Now, in our wedding chart, like, I found it a great wedding chart for me and Carl, and that our 10th anniversary is coming up actually next month. But the only thing I wasn't quite sure about was having Chiron right slap bang on our descendant, because the descendant shows the kinds of people that we bring into our world, and Chiron shows where we need to heal, and it shows the unhealed. And so it's so funny, because since we've got married, we've both found ourselves, we worked for the largest disability charity in the UK. So Carl was working there and I was volunteering there. So we were around lots of people with lots of health issues, lots of trauma and things like that. Of course, I work as a coach, and Carl, wherever he goes, he offers support and comfort for people and tries to create community. And so we have found that, having Chiron on your descendant, anything unhealed almost finds you like a magnet. And so you find this kind of dynamic definitely in the lives of coaches, in doctors as well, because that's about healing, psychologists, people with a deep desire to understand themselves and to thrive, to let go of everything that's not working. One of the things I really see as being quite a strong aspect in Sarah's chart is Venus in a conjunction to Saturn. I suspect as transformational as you are, you actually like to have quite straightforward relationships, and very grounded relationships. So your Venus in Taurus, Venus rules the sign of Taurus, so your Venus is very happy here. But in the sign, with Saturn really stabilizes us, and he's a bit of an old fart. He's a bit of an old giffer. Saturn is. So you'll probably find that you're attracted to very stable people, and you bring in a very, very stable partner. And at times that will create conflict for you, because obviously you do want to feel free, and yet you're absolutely actively asking for the deepest level of stability. And so I think at some point you're going to just have to give up and say, okay, yeah, actually I'm much more stable than I think. So I think, there's a kind of a bit of a conflict there, between who you think you are. Maybe, when you're a child, you just needed to find ways to sneak out and find ways to be your individual self. But when you're in the right relationship, you can do that and feel deep. And, my understanding is that you have that relationship. So I'm really pleased about that. Now, in terms of where planets are, if I was in your shoes right now, what would I be worried about or anticipating? Uranus is here. That's neither here nor there. That's quite good. Pluto's miles away from there. Okay, that's Jupiter. Where's Neptune? There it is. Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that's coming up, I think, at the moment is you've got Chiron coming into an alignment with your moon. That's definitely that brings in a lot of soul searching, and it brings in a bit of rawness. So if you don't already know what that's about, then and at the same time you've got Neptune coming into the North Node, and Neptune in the North Node often puts us in a place of questioning, makes us really doubt ourselves, actually. So it might be that you're coming to a place of just thinking, where am I going? What's going on? Just feels, and you've also got the North Node connecting with your Saturn and Venus. So actually, yeah, there's a bit of soul searching going on at the moment. It's not as serious as lots of the other things. So when I was looking at Deborah's chart and saying, wow, you've been through some big changes. You've been through changes, but you've already been prepared for those. North Node over your Saturn and Venus, give it a few months and it's cleared anyway. Chiron isn't quite at your moon yet. And Neptune is coming into this alignment. It's going to be there a long time. But it's about really feeling that inner focus again. Oh yeah, and I can see that Neptune is in opposition. Yeah, this is worth exploring. I think what's going on right now is the initial drama or whatever was going on in your life. It feels like it's cleared. It feels like you've had a chance to stabilize and find, and to kind of rest and feel like you've made a good decision. And then I think, like, one of the challenges coming up is a sort of emotional indecision. It feels like there's some choice points for you, and maybe doubting yourself a little bit. So if there's anything to focus on right now, I would really say it's in boosting who you really are and getting really clear as to your direction. And to be fair, the last couple of years have been the last 3 years have been really difficult for anyone, even the most grounded of people, to know what the hell's going on. So I hope that's useful. Okay, so Deborah's saying wrote too long a message and won't post. All them Sagittarius placements. Yes, Deborah, I hear you. Yeah, I mean, I've got my Mars, Neptune, North Node, Mercury and Sun there, so I understand completely. Colleen Murphy's joining us as well. Hi, Colleen. It's nice to have you back here. Sarah is saying, you're so bang on. Haha, amazing. Great. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on and have a look at the last chart. So, Richard, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to get to your chart this week. And same for you, Newbie But if you drop me your details, in fact, if you send it to Louisa Tanner Munson at gmail.com or via Carl, that's fine too. Because I know, you're in touch with both of us, then I can have a look at your charts. And obviously, I'm going to have a bit of a weekly sort of gathering, and we can do that. So let's have a look at this last chart then. So the last thing I'm looking at then is Nikki's chart. So Nikki was asking me about, actually, I just forgot to say where Sarah was. Asteroid Sarah. Now, this is something else, Sarah, that I think is quite amazing. It's showing up in the 9th house, and it's in a conjunction. See, I've put some extra bits in here. So this is Vesta, and Vesta is the goddess of truth and prophecy, and also like integrity. And so your name is actually like your cosmic programming of your name, like how your parents, it's so funny how parents choose names. But when you look up the name in somebody's chart and also the parents' chart, the name is usually really describing how the parent finds you. But yeah, your name is absolutely associated with integrity and this absolute need for truth, which probably has pissed off so many parents, like parents and older people in your life. Your need for the truth and your need to be in integrity has probably really pissed people off. But it's who you are, absolutely. And it's in the 9th house, which is about adventure and emigration and living outside of the context that you grew up in. Absolutely, 100%. So, right. So I'm looking at Nikki's chart then. And Nikki was asking, she was asking about how to understand Chiron in Scorpio in a conjunction with Mercury in Sagittarius, and also about this connection here, which is called an inconjunct. And it's also known as a quincunx. Now, an inconjunct or quincunx represents a 150-degree angle. So if we were to put in connection lines to the center and then put in a protractor, that would, from there to there, it would read 150 degrees. Now, the 150-degree aspect, it has to be really quite exact for it to even show up. And it's really difficult. It sort of plays out in quite a difficult way because the planets associated with it, like, Chiron here is in the sign of Scorpio, and it's interacting with a planet in the sign of Aries. So like Scorpio's water, Aries is fire. So they kind of cancel each other out a little bit. They're a little bit competing. If you think about fire and water, you get steam, you get lots and lots of steam. And then you've got Mercury here, which isn't, it's not in an inconjunct, but Mercury is very close to Chiron, and it's in what's known as a conjunction. But again, Chiron's in the sign of Scorpio and Mercury's in the sign of Sagittarius. So again, we've got, another kind of mismatched pairing. So Chiron will want to do things in a Scorpio watery way, which is a bit like a deep, murky lake. No disrespect to any Scorpios. I've got loads of Scorpios around me. And the thing that I love about the Scorpio energy is that it absolutely, if you're brave enough, it shows you your shit. It allows you to dive as deep as you want. You can really go as deep as you want into facing yourself. And I think the sign of Scorpio can be quite fearless in doing that. And if you try and push them to face their own poo-poo, they will probably push you out really quickly, because they're happy to look at it themselves, but they don't like being forced to look at it. So, that's the sort of key that I would say with Scorpios is never force a Scorpio to try and do something, because they will cut you out of their life quite quickly. So you've got that kind of energy with Chiron, and Chiron is about hurts. Chiron is about the wounding that we go through. So here, Nikki's chart, people born with Chiron in Scorpio, they tend to have a very, very strong defense mechanism from revealing their hurts, just to anyone, like it's my hurt, I'll deal with it. Most likely when they've brought their hurts to light, they'll tell people if they're comfortable to share that, because that gives them some power. The sign of Scorpio likes to have a certain level of control and power. And, if people find out your secrets, it puts you at quite a vulnerable position. But if you've already found out what's murky about yourself and you're okay with it, and then you share it with people with no shame at all, or no embarrassment, because we're all human, then nobody can have anything on you, because you're showing someone that he's dealt with. So I think that's the first part of the key to Chiron in the sign of Scorpio, is to deal with your mark before other people find it, because there is that feeling of absolute vulnerability that someone might find out your dark secret. Now, it's in the 10th house as well. The 10th house is this place here is very much about your career, but also the destination you're heading into. And so with your midheaven in the sign of Scorpio, it feels like your life is just converging to find out how to play with power, how to enjoy power, how to get more powerful, how to feel less vulnerable, how to live with a bit more certainty, because like the Scorpio energy really does need to feel confident of their abilities. And so it wouldn't surprise me if you come into some level of competency in the work that you do. And it really wouldn't surprise me if the work that you did was kind of psychological, given that Chiron is there. And it's really it's always emphasized in the charts of healers and people who heal themselves. It's a very, very strong theme for you. I also notice, I know you haven't asked me to comment on Chiron's positions to other things, but Chiron's in this great, lovely connection to Jupiter here, showing that you've got a lot of compassion, so much compassion for people in the process of healing, and also like this level of forgiveness. It's one of your personal values. And with Jupiter here in the second, to me, that's an indication that you're always able to find what you need to survive. There is this kind of bounce back ability that you've got, even though, Jupiter is in the sign of Pisces. And the sign of Pisces isn't necessarily known for fortitude, more it's kind of dreamy. I mean, I've got my Jupiter in Pisces. It makes people very can be a bit lackadaisical about pushing forwards. But then you've got your ascendant in the sign of Capricorn, which is really, really strong. And Capricorn is ruled, like the ruler of it is Saturn, and Saturn is here connected to Chiron in conjunct. I'll come to this in a minute. Now, Chiron in a conjunction with Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius. So this is the second time we've looked at Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius, and I've got my Mercury there as well. Mercury is not supposed to be very strong in the sign of Sagittarius, because the sign of Sagittarius isn't about facts and details. It's about big picture, and it's about the contextual information, not the hard facts or the little words. It's about all the space around the words and all the unspoken things. And it's like the whole idea of it. And we're playful as well. So, Sagittarian speakers aren't always that clear. We tend to go around in loops, and we tend to want to have a bit too much fun. And we're not very disciplined as thinkers, though. I think Sagittarian, like the Sagittarian Mercury energy, is kind of scholarly. We might not be English teachers or worried about getting every word right, but they're philosophy teachers. If they were a teacher, they would be philosophy teachers, psychology teachers, maybe a bit of politics if you wanted to be kind of philosophical about it and exploratory. There's also the essence of writing. There is the feeling like it might be good to write and share experience. So and you've got your moon really, really close to your Mercury, and then you've got your Pluto as well. So to me, actually, I'm more interested in this whole area here, Nikki. But to me, what's coming up is the fact that you are able to talk about emotions. It's like you dig deep and then you can share it and share from the heart, which is like the moon, and create some really strong potentials because of it. So yeah, I think you're probably, given that you've got your moon in the sign of Sagittarius, you've got your sun in the sign of Sagittarius, you've got your Capricorn rising, even though you've got your sun and moon in the sign of Sagittarius, I think this whole aspect here is kind of introverted, with Chiron and Mercury together. It really makes you look inside. And then having the moon and Pluto together, that's quite a strong thing. My mum has got a moon and Pluto conjunction. So's my husband's mum. So it's like the mother-in-law energy in our charts is very much moon and Pluto. So the emotions that come up for you are so deep, and that makes you less extroverted. I would say you're a lot more sort of introverted. Now, seeing this Saturn down here, Saturn shows where our limitations are, and it's in the 3rd house, which is where we're talking. So even though I said you're probably a little bit sort of like philosophical in the way you think and organize your thoughts, Saturn here is probably trying to get you to be a bit more correct. And it might show that actually you've had to be quite creative with how you've learnt with this inconjunct, or this aspect here between Chiron. It almost feels like you've been challenged. It's been quite challenging with how you've been learning. Now, why that is, I don't know necessarily. Are you dyslexic, or is the way your mind is wired, is it quite different to other people? It could be that you've had to grow up with several languages, and flicking between them created some difficulty. But to me, with Saturn and Chiron in a challenging relationship to each other, and also in a very strong relation, like Aries and Scorpio, they're so strong, so single-minded at times. You've got this need to get things really right, and to be important, and to be able to be single-minded in the way you move around your community. And then Chiron up here showing that there's wounds from speaking, there's wounds from being in the community that you've grown up in. It shows, it's almost showing, like Saturn sometimes in the 3rd house can show where we've maybe had bad relationships with our siblings, or our early childhood. I've got Saturn actually in my 3rd as well. Not in my 3rd, sorry. I've got Venus in Capricorn, so it's got a bit of that Saturn energy, and it's in opposition to Saturn. So I've got a Saturn theme going on in my 3rd house. And it can sometimes feel quite lonely growing up with Saturn in the 3rd house. It's almost like you grew up a little bit too serious. And so you're trying to work out how you move beyond that and how you can own it. So I really see that this dynamic here, especially if you can write about it or talk about it, or if you had a career that allowed you to express, and it wouldn't surprise me if you worked with people that needed help in communicating, like as a speech therapist or something like that, or as a teacher, helping people. But yeah, it's very deep, Nikki. And I think, as you move through it creates a lot of change for you. Last thing I want to focus on then, Nikki, it's just if there's something, right now you've got Pluto over your Neptune. That's definitely not an easy thing. Feels like you're coming up against yourself. It feels like there are areas in your life where you've been creative and spiritual and really followed your own intuition. And right now it almost feels hellish to do so. And yet you realize that you've got a lot of potential, as you strengthen your intuition. So it's your intuition is and your sensitivity is probably a bit like a curse at the moment, but I see that unlocking for you. And then you're not there just yet, because you're born in 1998, but your Saturn return is you, you're about like 2.5 years away from your Saturn return, or maybe even 3 years actually. That's building. So what tends to happen is Saturn is coming into this alignment. The Saturn return's a big thing that happens around the age of 29, and then we get a second Saturn return when we get to about 58, and it shows where our responsibilities get a little bit too much for us, and we have to change our direction often and get rid of things that aren't working, where things feel a bit too tight for us. And hopefully by the time you have your second one at 58, things are much easier because you've already learned how to shed what doesn't fit for you. It's a bit like shedding your skin. If you're a snake, you just shed it and you've got a lovely skin underneath. So you're already coming into that stage. And now, although that sounds like it's 2.5 years, 3 years away, that seems a long way off. But probably, if you're taking on more responsibilities at the moment, in preparation for it, I would start to, because it's really our first big challenge, I would start to think, am I in the right relationship? Am I in the right job? Am I living in the right place? And just think, if you're comfortable with everything around you, that's good. But if you start to get these intuitions or start hearing like this little voice in your head that's saying, don't feel very free, not really sure about this, it's important to follow those, even if it brings you pain, because that little voice in your head is letting you know that in your vigor and excitement to live your life and to grow and to express yourself, you've actually created almost like a prison for yourself. So and we all go through it, just look at where you're imprisoning yourself and where you want to be free. Often, as the Saturn return is coming, we're talking in very strong language, like, I have to do this. If I don't do this, this will happen. If I don't do this, this will happen. And so we stop trusting in the flow of life and goodness, and we start trying to force our agenda into our lives. So we ignore our body and we just listen to our minds. It's a very, very rational stage. And so my advice in preparation to this is start listening to your body, really start listening to your body, because your body will be telling you, especially with Pluto in a conjunction with Neptune, really tell you how amazing you are and what you need to focus on. You have also in the last couple of years had Uranus going over this angle here, which is disruptive, and it shows you having like moved away or kind of broken up with your childhood, so to speak. It's a liberating time where you're starting to like live your own life, but you're already moving out of that position, but I can see that in the recent past, literally about a year and a half ago, you started to find a lot more freedom, and whilst Uranus is going through this area of your home, which it's going to be for another few years, I think there's quite a lot of wanderlust. There's this need to, you'll probably find that you're disrupting your patterns a little bit because you're needing more freedom. So they would be the two things that I would say you need to watch out for at the moment. But yeah, I hope that was useful anyway. Last thing that I would say, given that Saturn is in opposition to Nikki, it feels like, with your actual named asteroid, it feels like you are on a journey of trying to free yourself from the chains, or free yourself from where you feel bound, and where you felt bound by your childhood. Nikki here is in the 9th house, which is very much about freedom and being in a new context. So I'm actually quite tired now, and I hope that was useful. I really hope that was useful. I got some more comments coming in. Oh no, I haven't. No more comments coming in. So I'm going to leave that there. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead. And I will be back. I'm going to do a daily show, a half-hour show, Monday, right the way through to Thursday, and then do a big one on Sundays. So that's hopefully how it's going to go. Let me know your thoughts and whatnot, and what you'd like more of, and so forth, so on and so forth. Sarah's coming in saying, Louisa, you have a real gift. I appreciate you taking the time with my chart. You know, this is what I love doing. I absolutely love this. And Richard is saying, thank you. You're very welcome. You know, the funny thing is, there's usually a unifying theme between the charts that I used to do pop-up astrology before on another show with my husband. And usually we'd have people phoning in with the same problems or really similar patterns. Something that's been coming up a lot this week is that like we had this conjunction between Jupiter and the Sun, and I did a show about it, and then another astrologer contacted me about it, and her Jupiter was right on my Sun, and it's like 27, 28 degrees in the Sun of Sagittarius. And then, so, you know, since then I've had a few more sort of coincidences around that degree in the sign of Sagittarius. Like I've got a new client that has come in for membership who's got their Sun there. And then, you know, Deborah, her moon and her Mercury's right there. So there's always these patterns. And I just think when I see these patterns and I get to explore them with people, to me, it makes me realize, you know, there is something connecting us all. And that makes me feel really optimistic. Really, really does. We've got this. So anyway, some last comments coming in, and then I'm going to clear off and go for a walk with my family. So Nubianette is saying, have a good rest. Yes, thank you. I need to rest my voice a bit. Smiley face from Richard. And thank you, Louisa, from Deborah. Well, thank you so much. I said it was going to be an hour, but yeah, I think Carl, my husband, who's watching downstairs, I think he's going to know that I was always going to overshoot that one. But anyway, take care, and I'll see you next time. Lots of love from Portugal to wherever you are in the world. Bye for now. Mwah.